We are now ready to welcome our first speaker of the day, Chrissy Neafsey. She is the proud wife of a New York City first responder, fire department, and NYPD, granddaughter of a police chief, and she's also an advocate for veterans and first responders, as you will see on her lovely shirt. She's the global lead of Yahoo's Valor ERG and a human resources executive with nearly 20 years of building inclusive, high impact teams. It's amazing work. Thank you. She is passionate about using tech to support mental health and prevent burnout. And Chrissy says, let's build the future of work together. Help me welcome Chrissy.
Hi everyone, I'm Chrissy Neafsey. As Casey mentioned, I am the wife of an NYPD and FDNY 20-year first responder. I'm also the daughter of 2 healthcare workers and the granddaughter of a former chief of police. I was raised by people who respond to crisis. And while I don't have the stomach for the blood and the guts, I've taken the triage mentality to think about how to use investment and return on investment to perpetuate return and impact on our future. And this is how I approach my business problems. So I find that we have 3 currencies to invest in. It's time, emotional investment, and monetary investment. So today, I'd like to present to you my business case, why I feel investing in first responders is the best return on our investment for our future communities. So I'm sure every single person is probably in this thoughtful leaders room because we all had some life-altering event in 2020. And I'll share mine. My husband, Kevin, was a firefighter on East Tremont Avenue in Engine 45 in the Bronx. The Bronx was absolutely ravaged by COVID. They had the highest rates of hospitalization and death in any of the 5 boroughs. And after 9 months of endless respiratory emergencies, Kevin suffered a career-ending injury of his own during a 3rd alarm fire in November of 2020. And this projected us on the path of navigating the administrative logistics and the emotional devastation of Kevin's retirement. And while I thought this was going to be Kevin's journey, not to make it about myself, but I had my own personal identity crisis during this time as we started to move 1 degree away from this, like the epicenter of our lives for the last 20 years. So we dove into the retirement seminars. They're hours-long events that are held every month. They cover everything from insurance strategies to healthcare scans to all the different deadlines that you have to make these irreversible decisions about your future. We attended them together. We took notes and wrote down our follow-up questions. And what really resonated with me was that at the start of every retirement seminar, no matter what the topic, it was focus on each other during retirement. Make sure you check in with one another and make sure you have a purpose coming out of your retirement because the decompressing is well-deserved and it's needed after a career as a first responder. But decompressing without a purpose in the future is where idleness kicks in. And that is where everything starts to fall apart. So really make sure that you focus on your purpose. And over the 2 years that we prepared for Kevin's retirement, I realized that the clarity of my own purpose came through in that time. And that was to be a bridge between our first responder community and the public, because our civilian communities really need to know how to leverage their unwavering support to commitment to public service. And this is what's going to build our intergenerational impact over time. There's 4.5 million first responders in the United States, career or volunteer. And while I can't speak for all of them, I have picked up on 3 themes that come up in our conversations over the last 20 years. And this is really at the core is community, mentorship, and selflessness. These 3 areas are really where our first responders find the purpose in their work and in their lives. And what a blessing, because these are 3 incredibly powerful impact drivers for positive intergenerational change in the future. Okay, so how does community come up for our first responders? I hear about it when they're talking about the affection that they have for their repeat patients over the course of the years. And all their favorite bars and restaurants where they celebrate their milestones and their holiday parties and their memorials. And it's in the complete devastation when their favorite butcher shop floods in a natural disaster, or the Spanish coffee shop that they go to every tour burns down in a fire. And our first responders take their time on their days off to go help these business owners rebuild their enterprises. And once the debris is cleared and the doors are back open for business, they're usually the first to show up. That's because our first responders are not transactional human beings. They care about the cultural nuances of the neighborhoods where they work and where they live. And they want to understand the relationship and the networks that exist, because when tragedy strikes, chaos ensues. And their purpose in that moment is to dive in, de-escalate, and preserve life. And this is a reminder to us that our safest communities are anchored in respect and mutual understanding. Which leads me to my second point around mentorship and the role that mentorship plays in developing our first responders. First responders have access to numerous bosses and senior team leads, and this variety of leadership allows them to learn these incredibly critical skills and techniques under different mental models, which really helps because everyone has different frames of learning. When you're identifying new skills and trying to practice new techniques, it's very easy to fall into the panic zone. But having a mentor pulls us back from the edge, and this really creates psychological safety and preserves our confidence. It's in these moments of mentorship where the bonds are created and the morale is maintained. And this is what gives our first responders the fortitude to push in into the unknown. Gen Z, 53% of Gen Z have self-identified as being neurodivergent. And this signals to me that these mentor-mentee relationships are going to be incredibly critical for helping our next generation in our communities create the mental and emotional resilience to solve problems under pressure and work as teams in moments of ambiguity. First responders also have a ton of side gigs, so we should think of them as a management cohort within our communities, employers within our neighborhoods, and really allow our local workforces to benefit from a mentorship-led management philosophy. I think because they're great scanners, they always also know when to jump in with a joke, break the tension, and give you a little cheerleadership of just letting you know that they're there to just reinforce their presence and their love. And this is just one way that first responders really showcase their selflessness. Selflessness is probably one of the most obvious aspects of being a first responder. First responders do not have the luxury of creating boundaries around trauma for their own personal benefit. And so ensuring that our first responders have access to counseling and the healthcare services that they need is not just a crisis for that population, but for our families, our communities, and on a national level. I want to highlight two organizations that are really special for our New York-based first responders. That's Friends of Firefighters and NYPD's PAPA, which is a police organization providing peer assistance. Friends of Firefighters was founded in right after September 11th, and since 2018, they've seen a 307% increase in demand for their services. In 2024 alone, they held 4,500 counseling sessions, and this wasn't just for firefighters. This is for their spouses and their children who were suffering from anxiety and suicidal ideations. These organizations are often held together through charitable donations and volunteers. And first responders never stop answering the call. They will volunteer in their days off and long into their retirement. They'll also crowdsource fundraising for their own organizations and for charities for families within their communities who are suffering their own crises. Ultimately, it's no surprise when a first responder dies in the line of duty, their family often establishes a foundation so that their legacy can continue to serve the public in death that represents the selflessness that they exhibited during their lives. So my call to action today is to invest in first responders in three ways. The first way, let's create commercial opportunities for first responder-owned businesses. This will help stabilize our local economies and help provide our local workforce with that mentorship-led management cohort. The second is to invest time with each other. And this is really around deepening our human-to-human connections. There's two-way mentorship between the public and the first responder community. And this is the way that we will be able to show up for each other and advocate for one another in crisis and to build communal resilience during peacetime. And the third way is to really increase our standards of what it means to show up for each other. And this is to stand side by side with our neighbors in our communities, show up to the events, donate to the foundations, and when the future feels overwhelming or intimidating, hold hands with your neighbor with the fortitude to push into the future together. Thank you very much.
Bye.